Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, sitting down to finally talk about Cyberpunk 2077. Thank you so much for your patience, I truly do appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you need something to attest to the fact that I have had so much to talk about since the Xbox showcase, let the timing of this video be it. I've talked about everything from Starfield and Fable to Avowed and Clockwork Revolution, all the news in between, and this is me getting to Cyberpunk in an urgent manner. I uploaded 4 videos in a 24-hour window, and I'm still getting to it this late. So my apologies. I will try to be better with this. You all know that Cyberpunk is a primary game here on the channel, as in when something happens that's newsworthy, we are right on top of it, right there with Bethesda and BioWare and the whole 9 yards. You know how it goes. But ladies and gentlemen, for those who have not caught up, there have been a ton of Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty previews. No, your boy didn't get any hands-on time. Saw a lot of outlets and YouTubers who did, but unfortunately I did not. This was all at Summer Game Days Fest, where content creators flew in, press flew in, and they got to go hands-on with a ton of other games early, but one of them being Phantom Liberty. It was for about an hour, and they were allowed to go anywhere they want, do whatever they want, but you were not allowed to directly capture the gameplay footage, which is unfortunate and is a bit of a sus alert. This doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. A lot of companies do this, but I always say to myself, okay, great. Now when I make the video, I can show the unique experience I had and visualize it for the audience, which always stinks, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be broken. But of course, given what happened with Cyberpunk's review cycle, you are right to be skeptical with it. I don't think it's necessarily a major red flag though. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into the thick of all the new details across Update 1.7 and Phantom Liberty, and it's a shocking overhaul here across the entire game. So get ready, and if you're new here and you're into Cyberpunk 2077 news, information, maybe even a review for Phantom Liberty, we'll be there. Consider subscribing, and with that, let's get started. At the top, what is in Phantom Liberty? What's like the new big piece of the game? It's called Dogtown, and man oh man, has a lot of press and content creators said that this is visually impressive, that shaking off the dust of the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 has really added a lot to this game in the visual department. I think this is going to be a nice little twist in the narrative for CD Projekt Red, because one thing that followed them around a bit, yeah, those unfinished looks at Cyberpunk 2077 on the PS4. Not only that, but UI across menus, on screen, during gameplay have been entirely overhauled and have said to have major improvements. So snapping around, equipping new stuff, comparing equipment, and so on and so forth is better than ever. So it gives it a fresh coat of paint effectively and starts to deliver more and more of what was supposed to be, I suppose, the true Cyberpunk experience in many ways. Now, what's really cool about all this news circulating is that across these previews, most of the stuff that people are talking about is in patch 1.7. Why is that noteworthy? Because that's just coming free to the game, and it's almost an entire overhaul of the systems there. So even if you can't be there day one for Phantom Liberty and you want to just check out some of the new bells and whistles, you can for free, which I think is great, because with Starfield coming out a few weeks beforehand, we may be a bit preoccupied, but the ability to tap in, see how things are looking, and say, oh yeah, I want to be a part of that. I'm going to get Phantom Liberty, say next month or something like that. That is going to be excelente. So what are some of these new features that are overlapping between Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty and patch 1.7? Let's start off with, I think, one of the most exciting ones, which is the skill tree overhaul. Now, across these updates that we've covered here for Cyberpunk 2077, we've seen CD Projekt Red quietly go underneath the hood and change the functionality of some perks, but this is a complete top to bottom overhaul. So what effectively happens here is there are dozens of new or reworked perks, and they've been updated where now each attribute, your body, your reflexes, etc., now have a single big skill tree associated with it, which will then incorporate all of those original perks that were within that tree into one. And then they add on top of that a brand new tier system where when you spend enough points, you'll unlock the next tier, which there are 3 in total. And then you can refund these perks individually. So there's no necessarily pigeonholing of any kind whatsoever. Now, what's great about all of this is that finally, we've been saying it for a while, team. We have been saying it for a while. There was that sus icon in the bottom middle of the skill tree in Cyberpunk 2077. Now, everyone was saying, what is this sixth skill? And given the kind of buggy nature of Cyberpunk, a lot of folks went, well, this might have just been cut perhaps, and they just never got to change the UI out or something. No. In fact, they're finally doing it a sixth skill tree called the Relic Tree, and it requires relic points, which no one seems to have an idea of what exactly is going to be in here, but they're defined as more game-changing elements. So that to me is extremely exciting because that's been taunting me since I first got my hands on the game during my review period. I'm like, what is that? You beat the game, and I'm like, they still didn't use it. What is that? But I always thought Cyberpunk's gameplay role-playing, as in being able to play how you want to play, was always fantastic. So perhaps that's not the most demanded feature to have overhauled, but we all know what is, and that is the police system, the wanted system. A lot of people want to get their GTA on in Night City, and it looks like now you finally will be able to. So for example, when your wanted goes up and you get inside a vehicle, originally all the NCPD was always on foot. Now they're going to get in vehicle. They're going to chase you down. They're going to shoot at you from the vehicles. Why is this great? Because it means that Cyberpunk 2077 is finally getting vehicular combat, not just for the enemies like the NCPD and the gangs shooting at you, but also for yourself. Now, what's even cooler about this is that it's been described that there are vehicles out there that have weapons attached to them. So think of, like, I grew up on the 007 game, so that's right where my head went. Like, I think of Everything or Nothing. I think of Nightfire, just driving around with these cool vehicles that have weapons attached to them. To have that with the timing of a new, what's defined as a spy thriller kind of expansion, I didn't think they'd be getting their James Bond on, but I am here for it. I am so excited about this because growing up on the 007 games, I feel like that's been something that we don't see a lot of companies borrow from. I think of maybe Mad Max as one example, and that's Mad Max, for God's sakes. Of course, there's going to be car combat. Rage is another example, but we don't really see it quite like this, like the James Bond style. So I'm very, very excited about that. But finally, a police rework, and it's even been mentioned that Max Tac can show up if your wanted level gets high enough, which is something that we saw in the beginning of the game that's very oppressive force. We have, of course, seen them throughout the experience in Cyberpunk 2077, and then we even saw them in Edge Runners. So now to get a real look and feel for them in-game based off our own actions is a welcome addition. Naturally, there are several new weapons, weapon mods, cyberware, and new finishers. However, from a thread from Susie Hunter, aka the Sphere Hunter, great YouTuber by the way, clothing will no longer give you stats or armor, but instead it'll come from your cyberware, and you can even level up the cyberware to unlock new abilities. Yo, this is what so many people wanted. A lot of folks, and I don't think I fully agree with them, said that Cyberpunk didn't lead enough into its cyberness, which I don't, again, really agree with. I thought a lot of the weapons and putting the relic in your head and all this stuff, I just think a lot of it was very cyberpunky, especially in this dystopian city. I was a fan of how they handled it, but now I think they're just, in my eyes, turning it up to 11. So I'm excited about that because now clothing not really serving as armor, but it's the cyberware. I think this is sort of what Edge Runners captured better than the base game. Things like the impact that cyberware can have on you with the Sandevistan and all these crazy supernatural things you can do. Naturally, the Sandevistan was already in the base game, but capturing that a little bit more, leveling it up, having abilities hidden behind that. She used one example where a special punch would be unlocked with the gorilla arms, which is just super, super exciting. So they're just completely overhauling how progression's even done, where I don't know if I want to load up my old V or just start a whole new playthrough when this update hits, because it feels like it's just justifying another return. Because on top of this, they're even adding new missions. You know, typically the new weapons and stuff, I'm like, okay, cool, let's mess around with them. But when you add in new progression elements, that is what lights my fire personally. So I'm very excited to see how deep it really goes on top of all of the new skills that we just went over. Like I said, a lot of this is being added for free. So stuff like the weapons, the skill rework, the cyberware enhancements, the police rework, all of this is being added for free. And the reason we haven't talked a ton about Phantom Liberty is the only stuff to really get into could be spoilery territory, which I've tried to avoid. But what has been said is that it's a much more choice dialogue driven story. And I like that because, as I said earlier, the gameplay role-playing for Cyberpunk 2077 was always fantastic in my eyes. I really enjoyed the approachability of every single level. And do I want to go guns blazing? Do I want to pretty much play Watch Dogs and just hack from afar? Do I want to do complete stealth? Do I want to do melee? I just feel they did a wonderful job with that. But what fell short for me, and I covered this during the launch period, was the illusion of choice was just too blatant to me. Sometimes illusion of choice can be masked very well, but I think it's getting worse and worse as the industry goes on. And Cyberpunk was a perfect example of that, where there really isn't a lot of deviation based off your choices. Now, hopefully with a more compartmentalized experience here in Edgerunners, we get that true role-playing experience. I think of it a lot like Fallout 4 to Far Harbor. When Fallout 4 came out, we were all like, yo, this is great, but let us role play, let us be good or evil and so on. And then Far Harbor comes around and it's like Bethesda game studios of old, right? And I think of it here the same way with Cyberpunk. No, we want the morality and the deep choices of the Witcher storyline. We don't really get that too much in Cyberpunk 2077. There's still multiple endings, but it's again not as drastic and twisting and turning as I think The Witcher 3 was. And so hopefully with Phantom Liberty, it is that moment of true choice and consequence, no real easy decision to be made, which again, just that lights my fire. You all know how much I love choice and consequence. Now, on top of that, it's been confirmed that there's not going to be any added romance to Phantom Liberty. A lot of people were going, ooh, that stinks. To me, good. I don't think we need to have this be, personally, and I know some will disagree, and respectfully, I understand, I don't think we need this distraction. To me personally, when we were talking about genitalia having physics and a lot of focus on romance and that nature of the game, I don't mind that it's there, but you can't convince me it didn't take at least a little bit away from the other stuff that would have made Cyberpunk a really special role-playing game. And so I already think the romance that's there in the base game is completely fine and serviceable. And I'd rather the writing efforts not go into new romances, but instead focusing on the choice-driven nature of Phantom Liberty. Like, I'd rather the assets and the resources of the writing talent go into how much can we spiderweb this? How much impact can we have with these choices? That to me is what I would personally prefer to see. Now, I totally get if you disagree. I understand how romance means a lot to certain gamers. For me, it's really hit or miss, and I frankly never really cared for it outside of a handful of arcs. Like, I think of Parvati in the Outer Worlds is one that's extremely well done. It's not even your romance with her at all. So I just think that there are ways to convey that better, and maybe we get a storyline like that, but no personal added romances here. So maybe good news or bad news depending on the type of gamer that you are. And that's pretty much everything, folks. From top to bottom, that's what's happening with Phantom Liberty. Much like what we've said with Starfield now, not too much longer. I mean, we just got a handful of months and then we'll get our hands on this expansion, and I just can't wait because the overhaul is really what is truly exciting to me. Like, the idea that they've just completely changed the base game, and then we're also going to get this new exciting choice-driven story on top of it that seems to realize the true potential of Cyberpunk. Again, as someone who's been here since the start through the ups and downs, this is what we call long-term storytelling, all right? So I'm here for it. Shout out to CD Projekt Red. They look like they're doing a great job here. Cannot wait to get my hands on this one, whether it be in a exclusive preview capacity, which who the hell knows if that ever happens, or when I play it alongside all of you. We'll see. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And with that, consider following me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.